Welcome back. Now, public servants are out in their numbers protesting around the country. They're demanding a 10% increase as opposed to the 3% offered by government. Workers are accusing government of arrogance and refusing to acknowledge their hard work. We're now joined by Heidi Giokos, who continues to monitor the protests out in Pretoria. Heidi, I can see there that it's not just the workers that have come out in their numbers. Political parties have also come to support the workers today. For instance, the SACP Solima Baila.
Mfundo, I'm sorry if I'm talking over you, but there seems to be a bit of a connection issue, so I'm just going to head straight into it. We are joined by SACP's Solly Mapaela. Thank you so much for your time, Solly. We do appreciate it. Interesting that you are here. You are obviously in support of the workers' demands for 10% wage increase.
Yes, we are here to support the workers on their demands because we believe that government has reneged on the agreement they signed with workers, and they set a very bad precedent across the bargaining industry. We want government firstly to comply and respect the bargaining processes, but fundamentally respect the creators of wealth, the creators of services, the workers, particularly these workers in the public sector who have taken a great risk during the COVID-19 peak at the front line defending our country on a novel virus, endangered their lives. Some died on duty, and yet during that period government reneges on its agreement with workers. So it really worries us as a Communist Party about the direction the government is taking, whether this government is extremely becoming anti-worker, and therefore if that's the case, we need to join workers and expand the fight against government anti-worker attitude so that we can entrench properly pro-worker legislation in the country, the protection of worker rights, the benefits of workers, including pay progression and proper pay, because at the moment, as you know, the inflation has risen extremely high in this country. Workers cannot afford life itself. Life has become a crisis for the workers and the working class in general and the poor in our country. And we can't, during that kind of a period, have government reneging on supporting the workers. So we are here supporting the workers for their demands.
I want to ask you if you think 10% is a fair increase that workers are asking for. And I ask this in the context of National Treasury saying they don't have fiscal resources to increase by 10%.
No, National Treasury is absolutely talking nonsense. We can just simply say that, because we have always said, let's demonstrate where money is in this country. There's enough money in this country. People should not be poor in this country. And this constrained, so-called constrained budget that is presented to us to create only expansionary basis for business to make profit at the expense of the poor and the working class, it's unacceptable. We have called for government particularly to change its monetary and fiscal policies. In other words, the money theory in this country, the budget theory, and how the budget and the money should serve the interests of the working class, of the people as a whole. At the moment, the Treasury is complying with the prescripts of the IMF, the World Bank, the OECD countries, not responding to the living conditions of the people of this country. And that's the main issue that is worrying us, and we reject that from an ideological point, because they are actually affirming a right-wing ideological position.
What happens should the 10% not be offered? There are threats of a national strike, basically a national shutdown with critical services coming to a halt. Surely that's going to be crippling and not good for our country.
Of course, the issue is that it can't be blamed on the workers. We should blame this completely at the door of government that is implementing these anti-worker policies. So whatever happens, the consequences of a national shutdown or whatever, it should be blamed on the government, because it has created this crisis. This crisis is not created by the workers. The international crisis of high inflation across the board is not a crisis of the workers. It's created by capitalists who are controlling treasuries, including our treasury in this country, the Reserve Bank and others. So they must come with appropriate policies and cushion the workers and the working class to live better in this country. They are providing services under extreme difficult conditions. Majority of these workers are working poor. In other words, They are workers, they get paid, but they just spend their money just so that they can continue to go up and down to work and have a little just to keep to give to their families. And the government has only created conditions for big capital to make more money. Look at the banks this year, how much they've made. All the banks in this country declared massive dividends, massive profits for their so-called shareholders. Where did they get this money in the midst of a crisis? Because they are shielded by government. So that is why we want to say whatever happens as a consequence of government obstinance, it should not be blamed on the workers, but right at the door of government.
Do you think Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana, as well as the Labour Minister, understand the severity of what's actually going on here?
Well, those comrades have embraced elitism of government, and they are getting poor advice. And there's enough clear political advice that we've made it public. It's not a secret advice, it's a well-known open advice. They are not using it because no, they can't listen because they are controlled by the IMF and the World Bank and the OECD countries. Just read annual reports of the IMF about South Africa every single year, on the World Bank, on what they say should happen in this country. I know when the interest rate is going to be raised by the Reserve Bank by just reading what the IMF says rather than what the monetary policy of the Reserve Bank says. That's the problem in this country, that our economy, we don't have a policy sovereignty. We can't make our own policy decisions as government. These are made by institutions outside of our country, outside the conditions that we face in our own society.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it. That's SACP's Solly Mapayela. And I do think, Mfundo, very strong words, basically against governments and the fact that government has failed the workers, have failed the working class, especially because they don't have policies in place to really understand the difficulties that workers face on a daily basis. He used the example of the fact that workers just get paid in order for them to get to work and back, and that's basically how they survive and live, which is it's a sad reality, but it's a reality that thousands of workers face. So they want their 10%, and it seems as though they're not going to back down from that.